What do you know? It's time for another exercise, this time on union types. So same format, bunch of comments. There's 6-ish parts, I think. This first one, create a variable called high score. That can be a number or a Boolean. That's it. Just make sure you annotate it correctly so TypeScript knows it can be either or. Part 2, create an array called stuff. And it can be an array of numbers or an array of strings. But it should not be an array of numbers and strings. So it should be an array like this or an array like this with numbers or only strings, but not the combination of them. And make sure you type it correctly. When I say type it, I don't mean, on your keyboard, type it correctly, but tell TypeScript the type annotation. Part 3, create a literal type called skill level. So a type alias that has 4 possible values. Beginner, intermediate, advanced, and expert. And then you're going to actually use that type down here for part 4. Create a type called ski school student, so another type alias that must have a name, that's a string, age is a number. Sport must be either ski, the literal type, or snowboard, the string. And then level must be one of the values from this skill level type. Part 5, define a type to represent an RGB color, so another type alias. R is a number, G and B are numbers. Also define a type to represent an HSL color. If you don't know RGB and HSL, it's okay. Just create an object type that has H as a number, S as a number, and L as a number. And then finally, create an array called colors that can hold a mixture of RGB and HSL color types. And then part 6, write a function called greet, nice and easy, that accepts a single string, a person's name, or an array of people's names. It should then print hello if it's one name, hello Colt for that single person, or it should print hello each person in the array. So if we passed it, an array with Colt and my cat Blue, it should print out hello Colt, and hello Blue. Simple logic, but the point is that it accepts a string or an array of strings. Okay, so let's go ahead and write a solution. Pause and do it on your own. I hope you will, but if not, you can watch me do it. Nice and easy. Create a variable called high score. High score. Let's use let here just so that it could change. And I didn't even tell you what value to give it. All that I said is that it needs to be of type number or Boolean. And we could just leave it like that. And now I could say high score is 1 or high score is false. Totally fine. Okay. Next, create an array called stuff. Const stuff is an array. What am I doing? Const stuff is an array that can be an array of numbers or an array of strings. So the type will be number array or string array. Now this is important that we have it this way. It is not the same as doing number or string as an array, right? This means it could be a mixture. This means all numbers in an array or all strings in the array. Create a literal type called skill level. So type skill level equals, and then it's a literal type. I'm just going to copy these values here and replace the commas with the union type pipe. So it has to be one of these 4. Okay. Next up, create a type called ski school student. It's an object type, so name must be a string, age must be a number, sport has to be ski or snowboard, and then level must be of type skill level. And there we go. Level has to be one of those 4 things from skill level. Beginner, intermediate, advanced. Sport, it was short enough just to put it in line, but we could move that to its own type. That just wasn't part of the exercise. Next up, define a type to represent an RGB color. Call it RGB. R is a number, G is a number, and B is a number. Super simple. And then we'll do the same thing for an HSL color. So H is a number, S is a number, and L is a number. And then we're going to use those 2 types to create an array called colors. And it can start empty, that's fine. But it's going to be a mixture of RGB. So I'm going to use these parens, RGB or HSL color types as an array. So it doesn't have to be only RGB or only HSL, unlike what we had up here, right there, right? That had to be all strings, all numbers. This is a mixture. You can use one RGB color with 10 HSLs as long as every element is of one of these two types. And then finally, we're going to write a function. We'll do an arrow function this time. Greet will be an arrow function, and it accepts a single string. So we'll call that maybe person. Or which, yeah, person is fine. Person is going to be a string or an array of strings. Now it's kind of hard to come up with a good name for something that is singular or plural. So people, person, name, greetees. We'll just call it person, even though it could be people. And then it's not going to return anything because we're printing. So we'll just do void as a return type. And then we get to the trickier part, which is basically we want to see, there's different ways of handling this, but are we dealing with a single string or an array? What I think I'll do is use type of. We're going to talk about type narrowing later on. It's a whole section, which refers to how do you differentiate between these two types or multiple types? How do you know what you're working with? Type of is one solution for some situations. So if type of person is string, it's nice and easy. Console.log, hello, comma, person. And then else, we'll just loop over for let p of person, even though it's multiple people, we will console.log that person. And that should do it. We're good to go.